In the deepest pit of the underworld, the Greeks said, there spins a wheel of fire, and bound to it, turning forever, is a man who can never get off. His name was Ixion, and his punishment is one of the strangest and most terrible the gods ever devised, to be lashed to a blazing winged wheel that whirls without end through the dark for all eternity. But what makes Ixion's story so unsettling is not the wheel. It is how he earned it. Ixion was shown more mercy than almost any mortal in Greek myth. He committed a horrifying crime, and the king of the gods himself forgave him, lifted him up, and welcomed him as a guest at the table of the gods. And Ixion repaid that mercy with the most insulting betrayal imaginable. How does a man go from being personally pardoned by Zeus to spinning on a wheel of fire forever? That is the question at the heart of this story. So tonight you'll hear the real tale of Ixion, the first man ever to murder his own kin, the astonishing mercy he was shown, the unforgivable way he threw it away, and the wheel that still turns in the dark. If you enjoy these stories, take a moment to subscribe. It genuinely keeps this channel alive, and tell me in the comments which myth you'd like next. Now settle in, and let's meet the most ungrateful man in all of Greek myth. Ixion was a king of the Lapiths, a people of the wild region of Thessaly in northern Greece, and his troubles began, as so many do, with a marriage. He had arranged to wed a young woman named Dia, the daughter of a man called Aeneas, and as was the custom, Ixion had promised her father a rich bride price, valuable gifts in exchange for the bride. But when the time came to pay, Ixion did not want to part with his treasures. And rather than simply refusing or breaking the agreement honestly, he devised something monstrous. He invited his new father-in-law to a feast, welcoming him warmly as an honored guest, and he prepared a trap. He had a deep pit dug and filled with blazing coals, and concealed it, and when the old man arrived, Ixion caused him to fall into the fiery pit where he died. With this single act, Ixion became something the world had never seen before. He was, the Greeks believed, the first human being ever to murder a member of his own family, a kinsman, bound to him now by marriage. And kin murder was not an ordinary crime. It was a pollution, a stain so deep that it set the murderer apart from all of decent society, and it carried a curse that no one quite knew how to lift. In the world of the ancient Greeks, a person stained with the blood of a killing, especially the killing of kin, was ritually polluted, and that pollution was contagious. It clung to the murderer like a sickness. To share a meal with him, to shelter him, even to speak with him, was to risk the pollution spreading to yourself and to draw down the anger of the gods. And so, Ixion, the first kinslayer, found every door in the world closed to him. The normal remedy was for the murderer to be ritually purified by another king or noble, a sacred ceremony that cleansed the stain and allowed the guilty man to rejoin human society. But Ixion's crime was so unprecedented, so horrifying, that no one would perform the rite for him. No king would take him in. No one would risk the contamination of his guilt. He wandered, an outcast, driven from place to place, raving and shunned, carrying his pollution with him like a plague that no one would touch. By every rite and custom of the Greek world, Ixion should have remained that way forever, a cursed and friendless exile, the man who had invented the murder of family, paying for it with a lifetime of isolation. But then something extraordinary happened. Someone took pity on him. And not just anyone, the king of the gods himself. Zeus, looking down on the wretched, polluted king, felt something that the gods did not often feel: compassion. Where every mortal had turned Ixion away in horror, Zeus chose to be merciful. He did for Ixion what no one else on earth would do. He purified him, cleansing the terrible stain of the kin murder, lifting the pollution that had made him an outcast. And then Zeus went further still, far further than mercy alone required. He did not merely forgive Ixion, he honored him. He invited the once cursed king up to Olympus to dwell among the immortals, to eat at the table of the gods and drink the nectar that kept them deathless. it was an almost unimaginable elevation. Ixion had been the most polluted man alive, a murderer of his own family whom no mortal would even speak to, and now he sat as a welcome guest in the halls of heaven, treated with friendship by the king of the gods himself. Few mortals in all of Greek myth were ever shown such grace. Any reasonable man would have spent the rest of his days in humble, overwhelming gratitude. But Ixion, as we have already seen, was not a reasonable or a grateful man. And once he was settled comfortably among the gods, his eyes began to wander to the worst possible place they could have wandered. As Ixion feasted in the halls of Olympus, he found himself in the presence of Hera, the queen of the gods, the wife of the very Zeus who had saved him, and Ixion conceived a desire for her. It was a madness of arrogance almost beyond belief. Here was a man who owed Zeus everything, his cleansing, his honor, his very place among the immortals, and he repaid that debt by lusting after Zeus's own wife, under Zeus's own roof. It was a double betrayal of the sacred bond between a host and his guest, which the Greeks held wholly above almost all things, and of the personal mercy that Zeus had shown him. Ixion began, quietly, to pursue the queen of the gods, to make his desire known to her. Hera, insulted and disturbed, went to her husband and told him what their guest was attempting. At first, the old stories say, Zeus could hardly believe it, that even Ixion could be so foolish, so blind to everything he had been given. And so the king of the gods devised a test to see whether the rumor was true, whether the man he had raised up from the dirt would truly dare to violate his wife and his hospitality both. It was a clever and a terrible test. Zeus would give Ixion exactly what he thought he wanted, or at least the perfect illusion of it. Zeus took a cloud, and from it he fashioned a phantom, a perfect image of Hera, identical to the queen of the gods in every visible way, shaped out of mist and vapor. The Greeks later gave this cloud woman a name, Nephele. Zeus set the phantom in Ixion's path and waited to see what his guest would do. And Ixion, believing he had finally won the queen of the gods herself, embraced the cloud image, never realizing that he was holding nothing but shaped mist, and in doing so, he proved his guilt beyond any possible doubt. He had not been falsely accused. Given the chance, he had reached straight for Zeus's wife. The test was complete, and Ixion had failed it utterly. From that strange union of a mortal and a cloud, the old stories say, an offspring was born, a strange and unnatural creature who would go on, in time, to father the race of centaurs, the wild half-horse, half-men of the mountains. But that is another tale. For Ixion himself, the moment the truth came out, there was no more mercy to be had. He had taken the greatest grace ever shown to a mortal and spat upon it. He had betrayed his host, his benefactor, and the Queen of Heaven, all at once. And now Zeus, his patience and his pity finally exhausted, would make of Ixion an example that the whole cosmos would remember forever. Zeus's anger, when it finally came, was as great as his mercy had been. He cast Ixion out of Olympus, and he resolved that this man, who had been forgiven the unforgivable and had answered forgiveness with betrayal, would suffer a punishment without end, a punishment that would stand forever as a warning about the wages of ingratitude. He did not simply kill him. Death was far too small a thing. Instead, Zeus designed a torment that would never, ever stop. He took a great wheel, and he bound Ixion to it, spread out and lashed fast so that he could never free himself. And then he set the wheel turning, and not just turning but blazing, wreathed in eternal fire, fitted with wings so that it would never slow and never rest. Some versions say the flaming wheel was flung up into the sky to spin among the winds. Others place it in the depths of the underworld, turning in the dark alongside the other great sinners. Either way, the sentence was the same. Ixion would ride that burning wheel, spinning over and over, around and around, with no beginning and no end, for all of eternity. The man who could not be still, who could not be content, who could not stop reaching for what was not his, would now never be still again. And so Ixion turns, the old stories say, to this very day. In some tellings, The gods bound him to the wheel with living serpents. In others, he is made to cry out a single confession over and over as he spins, that those who receive a kindness should repay their benefactors with kindness in return, the very lesson he so catastrophically failed to learn. The image of it is unforgettable, a man spread upon a vast wheel of fire, whirling endlessly through the dark, alone, with nothing to do but spin and burn and remember. There is a terrible symmetry to the punishment, the kind the Greeks loved. Ixion's whole life had been a kind of reckless, spinning motion, lurching from crime to mercy to betrayal, never grateful, never satisfied, never at rest, always grasping for the next thing he had not earned. The wheel simply makes that inner restlessness eternal and visible. He wanted more than he was given, again and again, even when he was given everything. Now he is fixed to a thing that moves forever and arrives nowhere, getting exactly as far as he always truly got, which is to say, nowhere at all. Of all the punishments in the Greek underworld, Ixion's is perhaps the one that speaks most directly to a certain kind of restless, ungrateful heart. What makes the story of Ixion linger is the mercy at the center of it. Most of the great sinners of Greek myth are simply wicked men who get what is coming to them. But Ixion was given something almost no one else receives, a second chance, freely offered by the highest power there is. He was lifted out of the worst disgrace imaginable and seated among the gods, and all that was asked of him in return was the most basic decency, gratitude, and respect for the one who had saved him. And he could not manage even that. The Greeks understood ingratitude to be a particularly ugly failing, a kind of moral blindness, and in Ixion they made it eternal. His punishment is not really about lust, or even about the insult to Hera. It is about what it means to take a great gift and treat it as nothing, to be shown grace and answer it with betrayal. There is a quiet warning in the spinning of that wheel for anyone who has ever been forgiven something they did not deserve and been tempted to forget it. The kindness we are shown, the story says, lays an obligation on us, and the person who cannot feel that obligation, who reaches greedily past every gift for something more, may find in the end that he has been reaching past the only things that ever truly mattered. If this is the kind of story you want more of, take a moment to subscribe and tell me in the comments which myth I should tell next. Sleep well.